You son of a bitch!
Do you have friends you swear a lot around? I do. I like swearing. It's almost if it's a stim for me. Have you ever sweared in a social setting that frowns upon curse words? Have you felt judged for using any swears? Yeah, probably. For some reason, we are socialized to avoid swearing, and excessive use of curse words has been associated with a limited vocabulary, as if curse words are used instead of regular ones. As if it's a sign of limited vocabulary or lacking intelligence, you name it. I mean, probably the majority of us have been in such situations or were taught this, but is any of the above actually the case? Or does science offer a different perspective? And in this case, I am saying perspective because the use of swear words is a very much personal thing. Some people just don't like them and don't use them as a matter of personal sensitivity. I know people like that, and around them I do tone it down or avoid swearing altogether, and they didn't have to ask. It's just that I like and respect them. That said, there were also instances where I did the exact opposite. Call me chaotic good, I guess. There aren't that many studies on swearing. I've looked up 4 and also found a book on swearing, which I haven't read yet, but most probably will at some point in the future. But that book hit my pile of shame, which at this point is probably twice my height. Yeah, it is generally accepted by scholars that there is an assumption, like I've said before, that taboo word usage indicates a limited vocabulary. This notion is regarded as the poverty of vocabulary framework. POV in short, not that kind of POV. I know what you're thinking. To expand on this framework, the assumption is that frequent swearing is an indicator of laziness, lacking adequate vocabulary and or education, or that people just can't help themselves. When talking about curse words, scholars group them into categories to further conceptualize the phenomenon. It's not actually a phenomenon, this type of words. They will use categories like ethnic, racial, gender slurs, profanity, blasphemy, expletives, obscenity, insults, swear words, curse words, dirty talk, name calling, or scatology. It is commonly argued that at the heart of using swears is a connotative or emotional component. Researchers, while studying this, also connotate the usage of swear words to traits of the Big Five inventory. Big Five inventory, which incorporates 5 character traits: openness, conscientious, this word, I'm having a stroke and I can't pronounce words for some reason. Extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. The connection between swearing and the traits was found to be positive, with extroversion and neuroticism. At this point, I would like to address one thing, as one of the swear word categories was racial, ethnic, gender slurs. These are bad in all context. It has to be fully agreed by all parties upon using slurs like among really close friends. On any and all occasions, slurs are a form of hate speech. In case you're not sure, don't. Just don't. It's like masturbating. If you don't know if it's okay in a given setting, don't. Research shows that the POV framework fails to account for notions where speakers actually fail to find a suitable piece of vocabulary and will hesitate, or other expressions like and so on. And that happens regardless of using swear words in other parts of their speech. Now, to be absolutely transparent, this experiment was conducted among college students, so their vocabulary would be more extensive than other populations. It is argued that taboo language serves its own purpose, not like in the sense of having any agency or whatever, just that they are used with purpose of communicating intenseness and succinctness or a very direct emotional expression. We need to talk about general verbal fluency, as that may also be an indicator of general intelligence. For that purpose, we use the controlled oral word association test, so the COAT. The COAT is performed in a way that participants are asked to say as many words starting with a certain letter. The outcomes are scored and compared to meta-norms stated for each age group, education level, etc. In general, when it comes to the mentioned test, women tend to do better, apart from the aforementioned differences. The poverty of vocabulary, the POV framework, predicts the fluency with taboo words means less fluency with words in general. And the fluency framework predicts, well, like the name suggests, fluency with taboo words has no negative impact on regular word fluency. So fluency extends across all language areas. If you're statistics freaks, go read the studies and how the experiments were conducted, etc. I'm not going into that here. We'll do a separate video on statistics and why knowing how they work matters, but not today. Overall, this study undermined the poverty of vocabulary framework, or simpler, showed swearing doesn't mean you have poor vocabulary, lacking, missing words, or anything like that. If anything, swear words help express emotions, and I have yet to see someone outside of the occasional comic strip when it comes to native speakers of a given language who use the swear word incorrectly, whereas misusing regular words happens all the time. Also, one more thing worth realizing, the study recognizes and mentions that since historically women have been second-class citizens, words or expressions relating to women have been and are still used disproportionately more frequently as pejorative or swears. Just one example is telling boys they shouldn't behave like girls when they cry. Expanding on this, the study does recognize also swears are context dependent. They can depend on speaker-listener relationships or other factors, and making oneself the subject of slurs can reduce the stigmatization these words present. Like if I say I'm a thorough bitch when I prepare research and script my videos. And in the end, fluency is fluency. More words used are more words used. And when someone doesn't know how to express themselves, yes, some may resort to swearing, but more often than not, the person will just stop talking, or talk around the missing word, or invent a new word like do that. A paper from the Yale Review of Undergraduate Research also reports that there is no specific link between using swears and intelligence. It did, however, find a relation between IQ and the desire to expand upon one's vocabulary. And even if swearing may be socially frowned upon, it doesn't relate to someone's overall intelligence. This time around, the paper corroborates the notion of swearing being related to communicating intense emotions. They also have secondary purpose or meaning, and here we have 5 separate purposes, subcategories, which are dysphemistic, used to be provocative; 2. Abusive, to intimidate; 3. Idiomatic, when the context permits swearing or to show interest; 4. Emphatic, to stress another word, the same way adverbs and adjectives are used; and cathartic, 5. To express shock or pain. And that last thing is really interesting, as it may point to some neurobiological reason for swearing to exist in the first place. If that sparks your interest, stick around and subscribe or follow or whatever. This shit's cool as all fuck, as you know. Experiments have been done on the use of swear words as a means of pain relief. One notable was when participants were asked to put their hand into ice cold water. Upon doing so, they were first asked to say regular, normal words, anything but swears, and withhold as long as possible. The second time around, they were told they could swear as much as they wanted, and again withstand as long as possible. The second time around, when they were allowed to swear, they withstood the cold on average 40 seconds longer. Now, I'd like you to think of one thing. Whenever you step on a Lego, yes, I know this is an extreme example, and start swearing because it hurts like all hell, I would argue it's a common reaction to swear. Common enough that anyone listening to this experiment may think some experiments do your taxes pay for thing that we all know or do, and I hear you. There's studies that may seem mundane or devoid of any purpose on the outside, but coming back to the pain relief part, there's hints and grounds to continue to explore the aforementioned connection to neurobiology. Maybe thanks to that, we may more accurately map pain pathways in the brain, since language parts of the brain are involved. I'm obviously not a neuroscientist, but neurolinguistics are awesome, and I am really considering going back to university to get my master's, since I already have a BA in linguistics. And we experience pain and what exactly is involved. We can get better in managing pain, if anything, for palliative care. Going back to the paper and the IQ part, this quickly starts getting socially problematic, and let me explain. Children in the households that offer more stimulation tend to have higher IQ levels than peers from households that don't offer as much stimuli. These stimuli and their range obviously varies and depends on the socioeconomic status of the household. Wealthier parents are able to afford better care. Additional activities, nannies, tutors, extracurricular activities. IQ seems to depend more and more heavily on wealth, and that already shows an enormous disadvantage to children worse off, not to mention impoverished. Less money indicates less opportunities indicates lower IQ. Now, one very fucking important thing I need to stress. Historically, for example, the US targeted people of color disproportionately, and poverty leads to higher crime rates. Especially when people of color are marginalized within their cities. Historically, black people were allowed to live in strictly designated areas, which were underfunded, and so generational poverty continues to this day. Children who were exposed to more stimuli report to have higher IQs, but if anything, that is a story of systemic inequality. Not to mention that measuring IQ is problematic in itself, but that again touches upon something completely else, and we'll get to IQ on a different occasion. I also wanted to recommend Swearing is Good for You, The Amazing Science of Bad Language by Emma Byrne, and as a bonus, enjoy a few Polish swear words and their literal translations. I also wanted to a personal anecdote or some personal experience. As an autistic person, actually as a neurodivergent person with autism and ADHD, I like swearing. I like swearing a lot. And to me, it's more of a certain way to play with words, to have fun with them. It can be also like a stim, like fidgeting. One of my stims is swearing. I absolutely have no fucking problem with people swearing around me, with people swearing in general. And I mean, yes, there is a fine line between being simplistic and being funny. It's all made up. They're just words. They won't hurt you. I understand personal boundaries. As I've said before, personal boundaries are a thing, and we should all respect them. Except when we are talking about pedophiles, pedophile presidents trying to ruin the world, just so that they can not expose an entire network of billionaire pedophiles. But other than that, it's okay to swear in my book. If you don't want to, you don't have to. That's cool with me. If you have a problem with me swearing, and I respect you, yeah, sure, I will tone it down. If you have a problem with me swearing because you're sensitive, yes, I will tone it down. Well, otherwise, swearing is fun, man. And with that, thank you for your attention. Have a nice fucking day. Hold the press. Now, because I'm dumb as all fuck, I forgot to include a few things. Throughout all the papers, there is a consensus that swearing has a specific purpose of expressing emotions, and we can say that swearing depends on context. And within a given context, swearing can be either polite or impolite, which also doesn't mean it cannot be interpreted by the listener as impolite, despite the speaker's intentions of friendliness, and that can also be outside of the inappropriate framework. So again, there is much more to swearing than one might think, and what we think is largely influenced by cultural norms without giving the topic a second thought. We may see superficial swearing in comedies with everything being permissible, and one's strict upbringing can make someone more than frown upon swearing. As we've already covered, it can be seen as simplistic, a sign of lower social status, etc., etc., etc. All in all, the neurobiological background of swearing reaches the left frontal and temporal lobe, and areas in the right cerebral hemisphere, the amygdala, which indicates emotional processing. It has also been pointed to a spike in amygdala activity when starting to use taboo words, which would connect swearing with arousal, and because of that, more potent memory when it comes to taboo words. We also have to touch upon compulsive swearing, so corpolalia. This has been associated with neurological conditions like Tourette's syndrome, dementia, be it senile or in Alzheimer's, or epilepsy. All in all, we can say that swearing is a spectrum. Funny how there is spectra in a great many things. Makes you think, doesn't it? It can be intentional, so we have full agency over what we say, how, why, and when. And on the other side of the spectrum, we lack the control over what we say, and since it's a spectrum, it can happen everywhere in between. I also need to add that men and women swear more or less at the same rate, but also men tend to swear more in the company of other men. I thought this to be very interesting, as it can be in line with other things that men do only in the company of other men, like locker room talk, using degrading language towards minorities or women. I briefly mentioned this in my men video up here, and I will inevitably be going back to that topic, but that's neither here nor there. just wanted to mention something that may look like a pattern of behavior among men only. And speaking of different standards, let's mention reactions to swearing when power or status disproportion is involved. Fuck me. People of color in the US are routinely being profiled on, I would say, any and all occasions disproportionately as compared to white people. The same can be said about Australia, where indigenous young people were being arrested for using swear words, when at the same time the men doing the arrests feel free to cuss as they please. The strength of swearing is highest in one's native language. When I say fuck, it's going to have less of an emotional trigger in my brain than any English native speaker would. The same when I say kurwa, and any non-native speaker of Polish says the same kurwa, it will definitely not be the same kurwa. And that measure intensity will degrade with each additional foreign language, so if you can imagine a hierarchy of languages one knows, for me that would be Polish, English, German. So when I say Scheiße, it's the weakest swear word I can say in this context or framework. The reaction of the nervous system is highest for one's native taboo words and degrades the less one knows any other language. Since we're still messing around with our brains, it is also worth mentioning that the reward system is also involved in swearing. The perceived reward we react to can be, for example, earning respect from peers when someone starts swearing, or for gaining fluency in swearing. There's one really interesting thing when we want to compare swear words and their strength across cultures. One of the ways we measure taboo words' intensity is by looking at people with Tourette's syndrome. During their corporalia episodes, they would usually say words that are most inappropriate in a given culture. Swearing can also be used as an indicator of various factors. What I mean by that is when someone swears rarely to not at all, and they suddenly start swearing profusely, not impulsively without control, although that too. It can be an indicator to see a neurologist, which is something I personally have not considered ever, like that can be a thing. And that is my bias because I swear a lot and have no problems with people swearing. It can also be an indicator of how close is a relationship between people or how tight a group is. It can even be an indicator of membership of a given group, like workers would use specific taboo words only within a specific group and not around anyone else. It has also been proven that occasional profanity may create a better atmosphere in the workplace. Respondents expressed they would rather hear someone swear than sit in silence, but that's a bit extreme. It can also be a comedic relief within a workplace. And with that, I would like to thank you for the second time that you stuck around for this video. I think swearing is all in all a very interesting topic to study because it is an expression of a given culture. Just like any other piece of vocabulary. If swearing is an act of rebelling, we can identify what it actually is that people are rebelling against through the use of language. The same way religions, cults, and sects have their own specific language, rebels have that too. And in both cases, the words they use are an indicator of belonging to a given group. That's why I started writing a book on religious language to identify commonalities and make us all more aware if the language we hear is kind or manipulative, used purposefully to draw us in. But that is still to come. At any rate, thank you again. You stuck around this long. Subscribe, like, share, comment. You do you, babe. And stick around, 'cause it only gets worse.